Welcome, welcome, welcome. We back at it, Ricardo. Thank you for coming back to the show to talk about your book, man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Tyrone. It's a pleasure being here again. I enjoyed very much the last time. You were always a wonderful host, so thank you for having me.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So last time we talked almost what, an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. I can't remember the time frame, but we only got to chapter 3 because you know how I am with the with the uh with the tabs and with the labeling and all that stuff of all the important stuff. So we're going to start at chapter 3, and this is the one that you talked about. The chapter name was "The Crystal Mind of Earth: The Planetary Network and Crystalline Communication." So before I get into the first tab, I do want to say this. Um, there's a cult rejects right there. What's up, brother? I want to get into the to Pilot Mountain real quick. What I learned about there. So I learned about
Sure.
how the stones was quartzite and all that other stuff, and that if you take your shoes and your socks off, you can feel your energy come in from the stones and the mountain itself. And I would say personally, I took my shoes off and took my socks off, and I did plant my feet on there, and I did feel different. Um, some kind of tingling in my feet. Like it was almost like tingling almost. And I was thinking about your book a lot. And the reason why I was thinking about your book was because of the simple fact that your book is talks a lot about vibrations, frequencies, and just the frequencies from the earth itself. And that's why I liked your book a lot. The name of your book, The Resonant Earth, is very, very, like I said, very interesting. When I first read it, I've read it already 3 or 4 times. I can't remember. I've read it a few times already, past the
Thank
amount
you.
that I loved it. And you know, like I'll go back to one of the sections where you was talking about the theta waves and trance states and alpha waves and focused awareness. We talked about that. That was one of the tabs. And I wonder, and this is what I was thinking when I was up there, if I had some type of frequency playing on some headphones, like some binaural beats or something like that, with my shoes and socks off, standing on top of that mountain, would that enhance my meditative state along with my trance state or whatever state that I'm trying to reach? And I believe it would be, just because of, just reading your book, going in detail about it. And we did a discussion on that. I'm actually posting that one on YouTube. It's on Twitter, but I'm about to post it to YouTube. Um, and on chapter 3, this is what's interesting, because before I read this tab, that mountain, they don't know how that mountain was created or how long ago it was created. It just came to be some way, somehow. There's theories, ideas, and all this other stuff, which is fine. But what's interesting to me is in chapter 3, you said the vibrations introduced by tectonic movement, water flow, or human interaction with these sites are intensified by the piezoelectric properties of the underlying crystals, turning the entire structure into a powerful resonator. Now, Jim J.P. Kelvy, if I said his name correctly, if I
McKelvey.
did that, yeah, okay, yeah, McKelvey, he actually talked about piezoelectric frequencies and stuff like that in or properties up there on Pilot Mountain. And that's
Yes.
why when I was listening to him and Randall Carson talking about it, I was immediately drawn back to your book. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, if you first of all, if you visit Cosmic Summit and you went to Pilot Mountain, I highly recommend you to go get The Resonant Earth by Ricardo. It's on
Thank you.
Amazon. Get that book, because that will explain a lot. Matter of fact, what I'm going to do after this is I'm sure that Jim probably read your book, but I'm definitely going to tag him and say, hey, if you haven't read his book, read his book. Because
Well, I'm not sure if it did.
yeah, I'm definitely going to let him know, because your book and visiting Pilot Mountain, and now every site that I visit from that point on, I'm always going to have your book on hand, because you talk about this stuff. You literally say, turning the entire structure into a powerful resonator. That mountain is a resonator from what I
Exactly.
understand.
Yes.
So, um, what let's see, what is the number one thing that drawn you to understanding how the world works as far as frequencies and stuff like that?
Well, that's kind of an easy answer, but the answer then gets complicated, right? That's what we are trying to find out.
Mhm.
How I got to it is simple. So I already knew about archaeoastronomy and
Mhm.
how these sites were extremely well aligned to certain cosmic events, or stars, or moons, planets, in specific times of the year. Adding to that, I when I started on X,
Mhm.
I went into this group that invite me in, and highly they had a highly advanced knowledge of global hallmarks,
Mhm.
which is something that had escaped me completely. And I started linking all of these polygonal elements, all these filler stones, all these clamps, all these flightless birds, all these
Mhm.
um, leather motifs, the the hands carved, the claw marks, all of these things appearing all over the world,
Right.
more or less at the same time. Of course, I didn't know about diffusion then. Diffusion explains this very well. But what drove me to it is, what is the the one element that combines all this information and makes it practical
Mhm.
and transforms it to a functional system.
Right. Right.
And then I started diving into archaeoacoustics. And
Right.
archaeoacoustics gave me the answer, because I've seen that in archaeoacoustics there is an endless array of papers of tests done inside these ancient sites, where these sites became active with practical effects by the introduction of sound. This is what they call, this will be further on the book, but this is what they call the trident of frequencies. There is the
Mhm.
frequency of the earth, this is the Schumann resonance, it is the frequency that is how the place resonates, and there's the human frequency that is introduced either by chanting, by playing instruments. Um, so that what was lead me there. But before you make another question, in relation to Pilot Mountain, I would like to say this: the most experts on this think that the mountain is made of quartz,
Mhm.
which is geologically, I look into it and it's correct. It's made out of quartz. So it's a gigantic piece of crystal that is somewhat fractured. You were there, you saw the fractures, right?
Mhm.
And some of the people that research this think that inside that cave that you have to crawl in, you have a labyrinth of passages that lead you to what they call to be a ship. Well, I think the ship is a misunderstanding of the ancient culture, because what they are translating as ship to me is allow you to travel.
Right.
So you have this quartz structure with a small entrance for minimum loss of energy, with a system of tunnels that help to conduct the energy. You have the
Mhm.
fault lines, you have the alignments, and then something that people call a ship, or something that allows you to travel, is inside.
Mhm.
So who tells you that the traveling is not made like an OBE experience, or that there isn't a portal in there that allows you to go to another place,
Mhm.
right? And that's what I think there is on Pilot Mountain. The problem is it's very hard to go into that hole and to do proper research. But there's some people now talking that it's possible to put a small drone into there. I'm not sure if he will be able to see anything in the dark, but it's a possibility to finally know where those tunnels lead and how big they get and how many rooms and what is inside that place. It might not even be anything in it, because if you think of West Kennet Long Barrow, there is nothing in it.
Mhm.
And yet, if you played 440 beats per second at the forecourt, you create a resonating sound that opens a portal on the first room to the left. This was
Mhm.
witnesses during the experiment, right? Is the portal real? Is it happening inside the mind of the person that is inside there, or if it is just inside the mind of the individual, is it still real? Can you still interact with these people that they said that they saw, or the room that they said that could completely see into the other side.
Right.
So there is always that. I find Pilot Mountain very interesting, especially
Right.
because of that. And it's active because you experimented. If you got barefooted there, you experimented. The energy is very palpable.
Yeah, I definitely felt it.
Yeah. And there's days where it's so powerful that people cannot go barefooted. That's documented there because there is
Man,
actual electric shocks.
bro, I'm
Uh,
telling you, bottom of my feet was really tingling. Like it
yeah,
was tingling. Like
yeah,
it was a feeling that I've never felt before. And I'm from Georgia. Okay, mind you, I'm from Georgia. I walked to my mailbox on concrete. Okay. I've walked in the woods in Georgia. I've walked in grass and everything else. This was a feeling I've never
yeah.
felt before. So and it wasn't, something that just was playing mind games with me. As soon as I honestly went there and was like, man, this is a joke. There's no way, right? There's no way,
You
right?
have a gigantic crystal vibrating several times per second,
Right underneath.
creating right underneath you, creating this electrical field. So if you measure the electrical field of the mountain, and I'm not sure that it was measured, you'll see that probably creates an aura above it because it creates that effect on the atmosphere.
It's funny you mentioned that. I had brought a compass, a sundial / compass with me, a little small one, it's probably about this big, right? I showed it before. And at certain point, and I didn't take a picture or video of it because I wasn't thinking, I was overloaded being there. My mind was overloaded being there. And I should have took a picture and video, but maybe somebody can do it in the future. I might do it just next year, just go up there because I've told my wife that I want to take them up there. But my compass on my sundial, it at one point it spun around like 3 times. And I thought it was me messing with something, or maybe it was something magnetic that I had on me that was pulling it or something like that. But it did move a few times, like 2 or 3 times in the circle, in a
Yeah.
360 motion. And it did it fast.
I can tell you as a fact, I will not tell names, but as a fact, I know someone that lost half battery in an instant off the
Really?
camera. Half
Yo,
battery.
that's funny you say that because my camera battery died
See?
at that same time. And it was
Yeah.
funny because it happened right before we went to that little area for them to do the ceremony and Randall and Jim to do their talking. And I was like, man, I'm so glad my battery died now instead of in the middle of that shit because I would have missed it. But it was so funny because that battery, I didn't even use my camera. I charged my battery the night before. I charged them up. I
It
charged
happened to
everything up.
several people. It happened to
And
several
then
people.
like just like, and we wasn't there for but 10, 15 minutes before it happened. I think, no, Matt, I'm sorry. I was there 30 minutes before everybody started, before everybody got there because I drove there first. And I didn't take the bus. And about 15 minutes after everybody started showing up and we started gathering around, that's when it died. And I was like, oh damn, that's crazy. I was like, I was thinking in the back of my head, and like I said, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, man, I thought I charged this last night. I could have
Yeah.
sworn I charged it. But and then I just wrote it off as me making a mistake and not charging it. I had 3 other batteries. I had a whole stack of batteries already. But that one battery, and the funny thing is, it wasn't an aftermarket battery. It was a Nikon battery.
Battery.
So this this battery is only like 6, 7, 8 months old, if that. So that's funny that you say that. Now that I think about that.
Yeah. So it happened to a few people then. And,
That's
and
crazy.
and I'm not sure if that's the day where it's more active because
It could then.
because of the descriptions that there are about Pilot Mountain, there are days that it's just almost impossible to go there because uh, how do you call static electricity? What's the name for you that you give to it?
Uh, yeah, that's what I would call it, static electricity.
It is okay.
Yeah.
So there's days that people cannot touch one another. They cannot walk there because they are going to be shocking constantly. So I think there's days even more active than that. Probably because the vibration is bigger underground for some reason, or some different alignment or position of the moon. All these have influence.
Dang, that's crazy, bro. I learned so much being over there.
Look,
I actually wrote an article on it, about to publish it, and there's not that much stuff. There's not that many things on it, online about it. Like when you try to go look about Pilot Mountain and what it has, there's not that much on there, or at least not from people who go up there and share their experiences.
I think I have a folder on it, so I can share it with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
Um,
Go on, go on.
oh, I was just going to say, well, if you had anything else to say, because I was going to jump on the next tab.
Sure, so jump on. Jump
Okay,
on.
so you talk about
So
Gobekli
we'll
Tepe.
stay on Pilot Mountain to the end.
Yeah, right. But this is going to fall into it, and this is why I like the conversations that we have, and I like how everything just happens with flow instead of preparation, because it's more fluid and more natural. So in here you talk about the Middle East. You actually have a subheading that says Middle East, and you talk about Gobekli Tepe, and you talk about how it's the oldest temple complex, or at least one of the oldest, depending on what people consider these areas. And then you said that the arrangement of the pillars creates a circular energy field that enhance the natural flow of the telluric currents, making Gobekli Tepe a powerful place for ritual and communal gatherings. Now, being there at Pilot Mountain, I definitely can see that much better. I say that because Pilot Mountain was known as a ritual place, and a communal gathering. Ceremonies were done there. Depending on what you consider a religious ceremonies were done there, and no different than Gobekli Tepe. Now, Gobekli Tepe sits up high too, right?
Yes.
On a mountain, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the crystal deposit, the natural crystal deposits that's around there, right?
Yes.
So it's interesting to know that when it comes to these places, whether it's a religious area or not, depending on what you consider religious, right? It's interesting to me because the simple fact that when you look at all the old civilizations that have anything to do with gods or goddesses, or anybody that's deified as a god or a goddess, their home is always on top of mountains, higher than the people below. No
Sure.
different than Egypt. Egypt is higher land than the city that surrounds it. You get the areas in Greek. A good example is Mount Olympus, where their god stayed at. They called it Mount Olympus,
Exactly.
right? Machu Picchu is on top,
On top.
right? You got places in Mesoamerica where they're higher than the average people, and if it's not much higher, the temple are sometimes on top of these areas, like the ziggurats or the pyramids in Mesoamerica.
Sure.
The Ben that's in the Ben that was on top of the pyramids in Giza, right? There was always an extra layer, extra thing of some type of that showed some type of representation of a god there, right? Because sometimes they would sketch their gods on top
Sure.
of these things and stuff like that.
And that's
So it's in,
curious because it is from the descriptions. The material that they use for the top of the pyramids and for the top of the needles,
mm-hmm.
the translation that they give, that I find it very, again, coincidence explaining, right? They call it electrum. And I find it very funny because I don't believe that Egyptians understood the word electricity, although they might use it in some form, but that's not the word they would use for sure. Mostly because they are an animistic society, and so they would give him a name that wouldn't come from the science department. Let's put it that way. But the fact that this electrum is supposed to be something with gold and silver mixed, which creates a superconductor kind of element, and it's placed on top of these things. So it has to be a connection there to put a superconductor on top
Right.
of a very conductive, energy conductive structure. So it's like it's almost allow us to read it like a book, almost, when you know what's going on underground and with all of these energies and the places they selected, and so somehow I think it has to be connected.
Yeah, and I was just looking at that. I had just put up the screen about that. It's interesting because your next tab is Africa, and the next one after that is Asia. Now, the one in Africa that a lot of people don't know about is Napta Playa, that area. And and I'm so happy you put that in your book, because I did read about how it has crystalline deposits in there. It's also known as a calendar, which is supposed to monitor the sky, right? Tell people what time they're supposed to do certain things. But what I liked what you wrote in your book is this is what you said: Naphtha Playa was likely used as a ceremonial and astronomical site where people connected with both the Earth and the cosmos. And that I found in my research to be true too, because like I said, it was a calendar. A lot of people don't know about that calendar, right? They actually, if I'm not mistaken, they actually took it down and moved the stones somewhere, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, they mapped it pretty well before,
Mm.
so we know that it has a lunar calendar for sure, because it
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of alignments, and they found other alignments to planets that indicate specific periods of the year. And we have the problem with looking at that calendar is that
Mm.
people look at it and see a desert.
Right.
They have to imagine it as a green country,
Right. Right.
extremely fertile, nothing to do what it is now. Right? So uh, a few hundreds of years before the Romans starting negotiating with North Africa, you had this community that painted in Tassili, in West Fazan. Sorry, there is these caves that is called the Cave of Swimmers, and these people were swimming in the high forests area that now is a desert, uh, and water is was extremely abundant. Right? They had so good life that they could paint themselves of what they do on the pools that they found on this cave. So it was like a swimming pool for them. Uh, so the world is has not always been as we see it today. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. We have to see it from their perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I always say that. I always tell people, take your sneakers and your shoes and your boots off and put on those sandals, meaning that you have to take your shoes off and put your feet in somebody else's shoes. How they lived back then, thousands of years ago. Just because you would do something today one way doesn't mean they did it back then that way, right? And even today, people still don't do the same thing the same way, with whether it's mathematics, drawing, talking, speaking. Everything is different based off everybody else's personal experience with these with their own lifestyle, right? And that's why I said it's interesting that you actually put Naphtha Playa in there, because a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people skip over that. A lot of people would tell me that doesn't have anything because it was just stones in the desert, in the dirt.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, come on, there's a lot more to that. There's a reason why there's research on it. There's a lot of reason why people do ceremonies around these places. You can do a ceremony anywhere, but you won't get the same effect
In
anywhere.
fact, no, it has to be a specific point.
It has to be a specific place, right time, the right place,
Exactly. And
right?
regarding what you just said, I like this very simple example that most people don't know. We walk in a completely different way that the ancients did.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they went to study people that walk barefooted, to this day, they don't put the heel on the ground
No.
as we do. They put the tip of the toes.
Yeah.
And there's a very simple reason for that. Because the toes will feel the ground and see if there is something that will stick in your foot or something like that. While we are used to shoes, so it's heel on the ground,
Yep.
we march and we smash the ground as we walk. They don't do that. So, and I find that curious because it's a completely different way of walking, and you just have to recede 1,000 years in time, and you have a lot of people on Earth that walked barefooted, and the first thing they put on the floor is the front of the foot and not the back of the foot as we do, and that's completely different. Although many people may think it's insignificant, it isn't. It is completely different in
Right.
terms of
Right.
mobility. Yeah.
Right. Right. That's interesting. I need to look into that, because I used to have this NCO when I was in the army, and this dude used to literally walk just on the tip of his feet. And it looks so weird. I mean, the dude had big ass calves too, man. Like these like this dude never missed leg day. You could tell, right? Because the way he walked, I mean, he ran like that. He walked like that. I mean, his whole style was doing that. And I was like, dang, man, I was like, that's different to me. And he said that what he used to do, because he was from Alabama, he used to tell me that he used to walk in the grass and the dirt like that. So that's pretty interesting.
That's the reason. That's how I walk here. Since I've learned it, I've used it, and I hurt myself much less because I do everything barefooted. I only put shoes if I have to go to the town. Otherwise, I walk through the grass, I walk through the fields to take the trash out. I'm always barefoot.
Yeah, when I go in my front yard, I have to walk barefoot. Matter of fact, I switched out my grass in the front yard. So I used to have what's called centipede grass, right? No, I'm sorry, St. Augustine grass. One year, it took me a few years to get it where it's at right now. But I dug up the whole thing and I switched it out with Bermuda grass, which is the same grass as golf course grass, right?
Yeah.
And just this year, I finally got it to the point where it looks really good. Like I have probably the best yard on the block right now. And it took years, bro. I'm not even lying. Matter of fact, when I started my yard, I started it because I wanted to switch out my grass, but I also wanted to connect with how my ancestors were paying attention to the stars for planting grass seeds. Now, this was part of my research and understanding hunters and gatherers, going from hunter-gatherers to agricultural need. So I had to learn the best date time, which is about May 13th to May 20th, to put my grass seeds down. And the reason why is because between May 13th and May 20th, that's when the temperature, the humidity, and the sun is at the right moment for me to plant these grass seeds. You know, you have to have certain criteria for the grass seeds to pop. And then I had to learn about when the rain was going to hit, because I was planting the grass seeds at a certain time, but then it will rain really hard for about two weeks, and it would sometimes wash away the grass seeds, or the new seedlings would grow and the roots weren't strong enough, so it would take those up. So there was a whole thing of me learning of just how to plant grass seeds. It took me, I'm going to say, from being having no knowledge on this at all, it took me 8 years to get my yard the way it is. 8 long years. Now just think about how
then you are wrong, because archaeologists tells us that they reached to Göbekli Tepe, and agriculture was born. It's just like that.
Yeah, they lying to us. I can tell you that personally, because having no knowledge on this stuff, it really hurt. And especially if I'm going and think about it. And I grew up here, so I knew how the weather was. I just wasn't paying attention to it for the criteria to be met for those seeds to grow and sustain their life throughout the summertime. So sometimes the grass would grow good, and then wintertime, if I didn't put the right nutrients down or aerate it right, or do what I was, or till it in certain places and stuff like that, the grass seeds would completely die. I literally had a front yard full of freaking straight up dirt. So it was interesting. Hey, so a Occult Reject says Scott was saying it has stuff showing the 4 cardinal points. Hey, give me detail about that part, man, because I want to know what that was, because I want to know. Do you know anything about the 4 cardinal points? I'm pretty sure he's probably talking about Pilot Mountain, but I want to make sure he verifies that.
Well, I suppose it's north, south, east, and west, but I'm not sure.
Or it could have been when I was talking about with my compass and my sundial. So
it could be a compass.
Oh, he said that. He said that.
Yes,
Pilot Mountain. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, appreciate that. So you know what he's talking about?
No, but at least we know where it is, and it has to do with the 4 cardinal points. So it probably is a compass. I don't know.
Yeah, hey, type in some more details about that, bro. I need it. Yeah, think chars and altars on the 4 directions. See, this is what
I see. Okay. Yeah.
See, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying. Sorry, I'm just going to say that each one of the elements is in alignment with one of the cardinal directions. So always using not only the energies that the Earth has, but probably some cosmic elements too. I don't know.
Right on,
Just trying
right
to
on,
guess.
right on, right on. So we're gonna go to Asia now.
Okay.
Mount, and I hope I say it right, and you're gonna correct me if I'm wrong. Mount Kailash, Tibet.
Mount Kailash. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a
So this
gigantic piece of crystal.
another yeah. So there was two king chairs that was at the Cosmic Summit, and a quote was saying he took pictures in there. So they had really nice chairs there, bro, that somebody
Okay.
could have used as a setup. So yeah, that was, yeah, I had to throw that out there. He got a Colt got a lot of good stuff out there. I appreciate him meeting him in person and stuff like that. Really cool ass dude. But
It is.
Mount Kailash is another mountain that has, quartz and other minerals that are supposed to be on this mountain that helped created it. Why did you add that one to your book? Because I honestly I've never heard of this mountain. So can you give me more details on?
There's not a lot of details because it's almost impossible to reach.
Mhm.
And the few expeditions that went there, that I had the privilege to access some of the information, um, they never managed to do the testing because something always goes wrong.
It's always
Uh,
something.
yeah, even reaching there, there's many days of camping and another camp and walking through ancient glaciers to reach to the mountain, and people just got exhausted. It's too straining, and you have to see that it's very high
Hmm.
where it is in the world. So, but the interesting thing is, I didn't know about Pilot Mountain there when I wrote that. And that is a gigantic example of exactly the same thing as Pilot Mountain. It's like Pilot Mountain is one of the crystal mountains of the world. Smaller, of course, than Mount Kailash, but it's the descriptions are the same. There is an entrance. There is something in there that allows to travel. So it's the same thing again, which I find again coincidence takes planning. Right? So
Right.
there must be something connecting them. And I put it there because it's in fact one of the few crystal mountains in the world.
Man,
Specific.
see,
It's a one block of quartz crystal.
Jesus.
That is a gigantic mountain. It's the Himalayas, right? So it's a huge mountain. They
That's
can see it when the expeditions that they attempt to go there. You can see it for days and don't reach it because
yeah,
it's so tall. You are seeing it, but you never get there. So
yeah. That's crazy. That's crazy.
yeah,
And I never really paid attention to the mountains and the quartz and all that. I mean, I have crystals. I love crystals. I love chakras, paying attention to my chakras, trying to balance them out. I keep uh, an amethyst next to me. I have a tamarind. I have all kinds of crystals around me. But I never really paid attention to the mountains that is basically a crystal, right? That moves like that acts like what is a crystal. So of course it moves and acts like a crystal, the energy and stuff like that. But now that I know this, your book really opened my eyes to this, and that's why I have to keep saying, people, please buy his book. Literally, get this man's book. I have it up there. It's a really good book. This is not something that was just thrown together. You can tell he's done his due diligence. We've had discussions in the past. You've opened my eyes up to these mountains, these crystals, the how the earth works. When we talked about the Nazca lines and all that other stuff. Um, we talked about even a little bit about the Bermuda Triangle and all these different places. When you was talking about Pilot Mountain, I didn't know there was tunnels in there. I don't think
yeah,
anybody said that there. I didn't know there was tunnels there. I didn't know that you can travel that there are certain ways to get to them, but it's just hard and not accessible to the basic individuals like us. You have to get permission and all
yeah.
this other stuff. So
There is an entrance. You have to
yeah.
crawl through it, but there is an entrance to the mountain.
See, I never, ever knew that.
Yeah,
And like I said, I didn't know anything about Pilot Mountain in the first place. But so that was my first experience with something like that. But like I said, it's just interesting because you actually you said, and correct me if wrong, if I heard you wrong, you say you didn't know about Pilot Mountain when you wrote about this book.
When I wrote the book, no.
Yeah. Okay. So you actually have a subheading in here called the Americas, and you
Yeah.
talk about Mexico, Ohio, Peru, and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure that would have been in there, right?
Yes, it would have been.
Because
It
see
will
here,
be in the next edition.
and you know what? There's always a chance for another edition.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
they add revising even. Revising is basically just updating and changing
Yeah.
and correcting
For
some stuff if
for
anything.
instance, my other book, the Stardust,
Yeah,
is a
that's what we're
book
going to.
that I wrote a decade and a half ago, except perhaps for the three last chapters that I wrote last year. And the few people that are kind enough to be honest with me say, well, your English has come a long way since you started writing. Right? So I do love the content of the book, but I understand that it's not written perfectly as people are used to see. But and you will
Man,
notice when you read it that I still love the concepts and the ideas that I exposed there. I think they're all valid, but it needs some work on the wording. It definitely needs.
you know, I would say this, man. I've read a lot of books. You know that every book that I've read has its own style and its own way of presenting its information. I've never read a book that had a better style or presentating way. And I'll give you an example. When I wrote my book, I'm that type of person where if I see somebody that does something that works, I will use their idea, right? And and if it's 20 people that I like different, I will incorporate each one of their
Sure.
ideas into what I want to do because nothing is invented. There's nothing new under the sun, right? It's just whether we've been exposed to it or not, right? And I do want to read your book, and we're going to go over Stardust. That's my next book that I'm going to read from you. I wanted to get this one out the way with the discussion and actually get in firsthand basis with the author Ricardo. You know what I'm saying? Buy his book, The Resonant Earth. Very good book. I would not stop. I will always promote this book. I'm telling you, I like
Thank you.
you know what? Matter of fact, it's so crazy. I promote people's stuff more than I promote my own, and it's only because I really enjoy a lot of people's work. I enjoy my work too, but I enjoy other people's work. So I always have to make sure I promote other people's stuff. I
And you
love
have
I
been
love
doing it for a lot of
yeah,
people.
yeah, and here in this subheading in this chapter, you talked about Serpent Mount. That's actually somewhere I want to go to next, and it's because it has to do with snakes and serpents and stuff like that. And I'm learning a lot about snakes and serpents from Albert Pike, Morals and Dogma, his book, which I'm be going into actually in the future. I'm probably going to just do a whole series just on his book alone because I have a lot of tabs. Like when I say I have a lot of tabs, matter of fact, I have his book right here. This one right here. You know, I got all these tabs in here. I got tabs that are tabs inside of tabs. Let me see if I can find one. I know yeah, here we go. So I got tabs on top of tabs, and then I got a whole
Yes.
paragraphs that I got to go read. Let me see if I can get this close. Yeah,
Yeah, I
see.
see it. I see it.
So I like, and that's exactly what I did with your book too, and that's why
Yeah, I love
it's
the way you
interesting.
read. I love the way you read.
So, and this goes into chapter 4, which is very, very interesting. Chapter 4, you say the geometry of creation and sacred geometry as energy amplification. Now, this is what I learned from reading from Albert Pike's book, the book that I just showed you. The letter G in the Mason symbol can mean two things that I've learned over the years. One can be knowledge or knowing, and the other one is geometry, which flows into what you're talking about right here. All right. You said the recurring, and this is the first paragraph that you said the recurring geometric patterns found in ancient sites aren't decorative, but functional. Sacred geometry, as our ancestors understood it, describes the fundamental patterns which energy flows. These patterns appear in the crystalline structure of stones and the somatic patterns formed by water and the flow patterns of telluric currents, and also on the standing wave formation of resonating frequencies. Now that's interesting to me because when you go at Pilot Mountain, they actually have a river that's
Mm-hmm.
nearby, right? So water, crystals seem to have
You have
some kind of amplification for each other because
and the
water is
fault
what?
lines. If
And
you
the
go,
fault
you
lines.
look on the fault lines. Yes.
Yeah, like water is a cleanser. When you look at it
What
from,
fault lines for the people that don't understand what's the importance of fault lines? The importance of fault lines is the vibrations because they are constantly micro uh, seismological discharge constantly. So it's produces the resonance and the vibration that will then excite the crystal matrix, that will then excite these huge blocks of crystal that are these mountains, for instance, or a megalithic site or whatever is built on top of these things.
mm,
Like in the Tarxian temples, you have a huge corridor that now doesn't have a ceiling, so the resonance is lost. But you have a
mm,
huge corridor of orthostats that are vertical placed stones to the main circular semicircular room at the end.
mm,
And they were there studying this. And these orthostats have huge dimples carved on these huge pieces of rock.
mm,
And the guy that was studying the place, the archaeologist, decided to make a fist and put inside the dimple. So the dimple would take just a little bit of his hand, like not where's the camera? Right here. So just a little bit of his hand. And
mm,
what he felt is described as the same feeling you get if you have a subwoofer at home and you put your hand close to the subwoofer. It has the impact of wind being
mm,
projected. So the site is still active today because it's on top of the fault line, the same one that produces the effects on the Halsaf-Lieni hypogeum that is only 660 feet away.
mm,
Um, and so those stones are continuously producing this subsonic, infrasonic sound waves into one another that will sync your mind. That when you reach to the final room, your mind is already synced to the frequency of the site itself, as it happens in many other sites. That's the
mm,
purpose of these frequencies. Like in Alatri, you have 9 gates orientated to 9 positions of the astronomical elements, and every single one of those gates has a magnetic vortex produced naturally that tunes everyone's brain to 110 hertz as you enter. And so people inside there experiment things like telekinesis, telepathy, visions, altered states of consciousness, because they are all on the same frequency.
mm,
Every single one, right? They're all tuned, and it's all part of this fantastic technological world. That's one of the reasons why I call it the Type One civilization, probably
mm,
7,000 years ago, because they
right.
took all of the energy not from the star as a Type One civilization, but from the Earth that takes it from the sun. So
Mm.
it's basically the same thing.
That's interesting you say that because, like I said, we don't prep for these discussions. We just go straight into them, right? We raw dog it real, right? We go straight
Yeah.
into it. We don't even play it in the game. So that's interesting you say that because the next tab that I have that you actually put in your book that I found interesting was the 8 pointed stars often found in Islamic and medieval Christian art represent balance, order, and cosmic harmony. This shape enhances resonance with sacred spaces, supporting field where earthly and cosmic energies converge. Now, you was mentioning about the sun and the earth and how they kind of work together and stuff like that, and the sun provides whatever it needs for the earth, and we get all this other stuff. What's interesting about that is that the 8 pointed star can be found in a lot of different places, and actually, one of the first gods, Anu or An from the Sumerian, Anuna / Anunnaki, had an 8 pointed star. But this 8 pointed star also represented the sun, right? Um, so let me ask you this: when you wrote that part, because you said the you said when you said that this shape enhanced resonance with sacred places, where can you find 8 pointed stars at these places that people will understand by from a description that you're given? Like, I know why was that important to put in the book? Basically, why I'm trying to ask.
I think it's a common element that everyone would understand what is the use of sacred geometry. I was not trying to imply that you will find it as as an architectural element, as the eight-pointed star, but we'll find the simplification of that very same geometrical form in many ancient structures. Because it's like Randall Carlson used to say that it's the squaring of the circle, or and you see, and so that you can put all of these geometrical forms inside those eight-pointed stars, and that's where I'm trying to link there. I really cannot give you an example of a megalithic site that is in an eight-pointed star, but I can give you lots of star forts, for instance.
Okay.
And they are using that type of geometry to take whatever energy they take from the ground. In fact, there is a group of researchers that believe that the original star forts are actually grown, not built.
Right.
They actually emerge from the ground by being in specific points of energy.
Okay. That makes sense because, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just going to say that what point that it's true, I don't know. But the fact is, every single star fort was built on top of a much older structure.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of them they rebuild over them, and there has to be a reason why they're doing it, right? The energy could be felt there. The cardinal points. You talk about the ancient builders. And it's funny you say that because the next tab that I have, I'm telling you, these tabs, man, I'm telling you, it's crazy. I might as well just highlight the whole damn book, right? But anyway,
the truth is, we rehearsed this 10 times. Okay, we rehearsed this 10 times.
It's amazing because I never ever rehearse anything that I say. I just go off of what the tabs say. I don't prep. I don't do anything because I have these tabs. I know what I've read. I know what I understand, and I know the questions that I want to ask. And this is interesting. You said about the structures because it says the ancient builders often oriented their structures toward the cardinal points or significant celestial events such as solstices and equinoxes. That's exactly what you said on the next tab that I did, and it's actually on the same page as the eight-pointed star. So it's interesting to me that we know that they rebuilt and built and rebuilt and built and rebuilt these places over and over and over again, and they had to do something with the stone. It had to be near a water of some type. A tectonic plate had to be near of some sort, and a lot of people call these portals. Places like when you was talking about earlier where you mentioned the word visions, which stuck into my head because when you read anything from the Bible, when these individuals had their mysterious interventions with, a god or an angel or something like that, they were on top of a mountain, either meditating or fasting, which would enhance their ability.
If they were taking something, it's not written.
Psychedelics, but they said they did. They definitely
well,
see. This is
the burning what is called
the burning bush.
The burning bush is termed as to be a DMT plant, for instance. So that would produce very strong visions for sure.
Yeah, I actually looked up some research about fasting, and then depending on the human, after 10 days of fasting, you would start or is it 10 to 15? It could have been 20, somewhere around that time. If you fasted for a certain amount of time, depending on the person, of course, your visualization, your visions will be enhanced, meaning your imaginary thoughts and what you see would be enhanced. I can't remember there's a word for that, but I can't think of it off the top of my head for some reason right now. But you would see things that's not there. A good example,
and you normally don't see them.
Right, they are there, but because your frequency wasn't up to par, you couldn't see it at that time.
In that case, I think that is after you reach a certain point fasting, your body has to start cutting some things. And the things that it cuts first is systems that are not essential for that moment, and that includes the the chemical reactions on the brain that separate reality from fiction, dream from reality, basically. And so you
Yep.
start accessing these other areas that might be real or not, but that otherwise your brain wouldn't capture. The same as psychedelics do, but in a different kind
Yeah.
of procedure.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I can't remember who was talking about it, but I was talking to somebody a couple of years ago about this, about how psychedelics probably helped with our civilizations.
Sure.
Um, it got kind of deep. I'm pretty sure I have it on my YouTube. I have to look at it. But what's interesting, because you're talking about psychedelics and stuff like that. Um, and I'm not going to say that part because I'll tell you afterwards about Pilot Mountain and what they wanted to do there. But so you already got the hint, right? You already got the hint, right? There was a couple of people that said what they wanted to do there while we was there, and I'm not going to get into details or nothing. But what's interesting is that in the next tab that you talked about, you said many sacred structures serve as astronomical observatories where geometry aligns the structure with the celestial bodies. Then you talk about the Maya period at Chichen Itza, for example, aligns with the sun position during the equinoxes, casting a shadow that appears as a serpent descending down the temple steps. Now, that's interesting because, like I said, I've been reading a lot about serpents from Morals and Dogma from Albert Pike, and what I'm gathering so far is that, and I'll go over it in detail because he backs his stuff up with sources and stuff like that. The serpent wasn't always looked at as bad as how we look at it as
Oh,
today,
not at all.
right? It
On the
was actually
contrary.
right. It was opposite, right? It was something good. It was something that to look forward to. It was something that it was a representation for a lot of cultures around the world.
In fact, if
And
you think about it, it was exactly what is written in the Bible. It was the one that gave the wisdom that
yeah,
opened the
knowledge.
eyes to the world, knowledge.
You know, one of the it's funny you bring that up because one of the first questions, well, not one of the first questions, but one of my ideas and thoughts and questions that I had pertaining God in the Bible, KGV, or any Abrahamic faith was, why didn't God want us to have knowledge? Why would He rather us live a long life but not have knowledge? Right? Why? What was the reason why for that? And I knew that, and I know that
Do you want your kids to be dumb?
no, I don't. I
Is
want
that
them
some
to
kind
know
of
everything.
freedom or happiness to be dumb? Well,
Ex-
there is some happiness in being dumb, and until you realize that you are dumb, right?
Yeah, but that's a good ass question that you ask. Do you want your kids to be dumb? Do you want to keep your kids from knowing? Right? And I don't want that. I want my kids to know everything that I know plus more. So that was like one of my questions as a little kid. And I would ask, my parents, I would ask the pastor, anybody that came across and said they was very religious. I'd be like, why one of the first things that God kept from us was knowledge, right? And is it really bad that we know the things that we know because of the serpent, right? Or I should say the serpent, because the serpent is the one that got Eve to eat the apple,
True.
which I've learned from Anton Parks actually, from his book Eden, that metallurgy was the forbidden fruit that was given to us. And it was because of Enki. And he backs it up using his and I talked to you about this before, and I've talked about it plenty of times. He gives up his cuneiform tablet identifier that says that, so my idea was, what was it? Because here's a good example. All these places that we're talking about are on high mountains or high land,
High
right?
ground, always.
What was the Tower of Babel? Supposed to be something that reached the heavens, right? Was it necessarily a tower? Who knows? Was it a mountain? Who knows? Was it a, a ziggurat? Who knows? We just know that it was called the
Or
Tower of Babel.
or was it like the ancient city of Gore, or like the, the castle of Alatri,
Yeah,
where you have a tower that creates a bubble that makes you completely invulnerable to enemies because they
right,
couldn't cross it. So
right.
you have this group of people working together for a society where they are all inclusive, right? They
Mm-hmm.
speak all the same language, so they clearly have all the tools to work together and to flourish. And there is this interest in destroying that and dividing the people, divide and conquer, dividing the people, dividing the languages, sending each one to its place, and taking the tower down that symbolizes the power.
Right.
So again, not a positive thing. And there is a reason why, for instance, in my country, until 60 years ago, you didn't get the Old Testament.
Yeah.
They just don't allow you to have it. And even the New Testament is something that happened 80 years ago. Before that, you have these small missions with just the parts that they wanted people to know.
Right. Right.
And when I was in a Catholic school,
Hmm.
and when I finally got access to the Old Testament, I had a lot of questions to my teacher.
Yeah.
Who the hell is this maniac? Because you read the New Testament and it's all love and peace, and you read the Old Testament and
It's
this
all hate.
bloodthirsty God that eliminates and burns villages to the ground
Yep.
or cities to the ground, killing everyone. What is this? So they feared that people made the same questions. Apparently, most of the people don't make those questions, and they think that it's all justified because those tribes have to have a place of their own, or something like that.
Yeah. You know, I find it very strange that a lot of people would say Jesus and God was the same person. And I say that because, like you said, when you read the Old Testament, when you actually read the Old Testament, not just trying to read it just to get by it, when you actually read it and then understand it, comprehend what is going on in there and visualize it internally in your mind like a movie, you see that God or whoever the gods were in the Old Testament, they weren't happy, loving individuals. I mean, they did have love for something. You can love something and still treat it wrong, right? Look at the
Sure.
relationships around the world. You know, oh, I love you, and then that man goes slaps his wife up, but then turns around and says, "I love you" again,
But I
right?
love you. Stop, but I
Exactly,
love you.
exactly, and that's and no different than parents whooping their kids' asses. You
Job,
know,
the
Joe,
book of
yeah,
Job. What
yeah,
what what was that? Have you? I'm sure you read it,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So the poor man passed through all of those things from bad to worse for a bet.
That's my point. God placed a bet with the devil on Job, and that's crazy.
It's insane, right? Well, I like the idea of what's his name, Tom Waits. Tom Waits has a song where he says, "There is no God. It's just there is no devil. It's just God when he's drunk." And
Or yeah,
sometimes it looks like it because it is insane. If people actually read the Old Testament as it is written and passed on to us, it shows a God that selected someone to uphold him. Though that same someone is fighting among themselves in corruption constantly, right?
mhm,
And the other ones are just meat for the canyon.
yeah, yeah. I always say that I think God had a split personality. You remember that? Damn, what was that movie called, man? Shoot, it was the second version of Glass with
Oh yeah, yeah,
you know, what I can't
yeah.
remember what
The guy
I
that with
can't.
the
Yeah,
multiple
yeah,
personality.
yeah. Patricia. Yeah. he, it's Patricia now. Yeah, that's how I thought God was. Like in a
It's
minute, he could change his personality.
it's the good
Split. It's
cop,
called
bad
Split.
cop
I think it was
routine.
called.
Sorry.
I think it was called Split, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's split. Yes, yes. I think it's the name. I was just saying that it's exactly the same thing as the bad cop, good cop routine from one person only
Yeah,
or one entity.
yeah, yeah. And that's why me personally, I have to read the text for myself. And what I try to do is when I'm reading any book, any material that I have, I try to visualize it in a vision in my mind. So I'm trying to play it like a movie or a
Yeah,
documentary or a
all the
TV
time. Yeah.
show in my head. And it takes a lot. That takes a lot of energy. Like it really takes a lot of energy for me to do that. And it strikes me, and that's probably why I understand things a lot better because I'm a visual learner. I'm not really good with somebody telling me something or repeating something to me. I have to have my eyes on it first. And or at least I have to get my eyes on it eventually after the person told me. And then later on, like with your book, when I was up there at Pilot Mountain and I got to experience this stuff, your book was running through my head like fucking water, bro. Like, I'm not even kidding. Because I was like, oh man. And I was upset because I brought my Kindle with me, but I didn't charge it up. That it was only like at 10%. I don't really charge it up because it lasts pretty long. So I don't really pay attention to the battery until, it shuts off. And I brought it up there with me, but I didn't bring it to Pilot Mountain with me. And I was so mad because I could have easily brought your book up there while these people were talking and just went through my Kindle, seeing what you wrote about it. You know what I'm saying? Because when I read your book, when you talk about the frequencies, the vibrations, the quartz, the crystals, and all this other stuff, it that's what they were talking about there. And I've never been to the pyramids. I've never been to anything fascinating like a lot of people have, right? And I probably, if I ever had the chance, I probably could bring out better material, right? Better and more material because I'm experienced it. So experiencing Pilot Mountain was something great for me. And this is what is interesting. I heard that Pilot Mountain was much higher and bigger than the Great Pyramids. That's what I've heard. Now, in your book, you also say the Great Pyramid of Giza is not an architectural marvel, but also an acoustically resonant structure. The king's chamber within the pyramid is made of quartz-rich granite, which interacts with sound and vibration, amplifying certain frequencies that resonate with the Earth's natural field. So this is what I've learned about the king's chamber, and I believe I was talking to Third Eye about this. You know who Third Eye is, right?
I know.
He's been to the pyramids. He's been there, did his due diligence. Very intelligent guy, very smart, very forthgoing, and just always wanting to share what he experienced at these places. In the King's Chamber, I was talking to him about this 2 years ago because I actually took a class from Harvard about the pyramids. That was actually one of the first classes I ever took about the historical side of trying to get something certified or be credentialed as far as in the field, right? Like, everybody wants credentials. So I actually have a certificate from that class. And what they was saying is, those little tunnels or those little small square things that's in the pyramid that goes throughout the pyramids, that goes from one section to the next. I think it starts at the King's Chamber and it goes throughout the pyramids in certain locations. I was reading something a couple of years ago, and I can't remember which book it was. I want to say it was probably from Godfrey Higgins, but I could have even mistaken, where he was saying that the king would sit there and people would be in different parts of the pyramid, right? And he would sit there and do his chanting, his ohms, or whatever people would want to call it, and it will resonate throughout the pyramids where other people can hear it, like they're standing next to you, right? Like they're somewhere across the pyramid, but they could hear you. They could hear the king doing his ceremonies and chants at those locations. Now, what's interesting to me is that I've read that when that was tested by modern archaeologists and stuff like that, they got a different type of feeling, and that's where they got the idea that the pyramid wasn't just a tomb like some people thought, but it was a place where you could get some type of frequency boost or health healing from inside there, and that it was a place of healing. Basically, just keep it simple, stupid, that it was not just a tomb, but a place for healing and ceremonial things. I also read in Morals and Dogma and with Albert Pike that the pyramid shape, not the pyramids of Giza itself, but the pyramids were known as a place for burial sites. And that's why some people believe that it was burial. Now, this is what's interesting. The Ba and the Ka. Now, the Ba is mostly like a bird, like your spirit bird. It can go into a different interdimension, basically, and go into a different world. But it can come back to the world here. The Ka is more like where the person had to stay at. That's why they buried them with gold and whatever they loved, their favorite objects and stuff like that with them, because the Ka required it. Now,
the tombs are on the Valley of the Kings, are not on the pyramids.
Exactly.
That's a recent thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I read also. But the point is that the pyramid was known as you said Earth's natural field, right? And there's three of them. So do you think that three of them would be the three times the resonation that it needed to help individuals, like, or was it more of like just they wanted to have three different separate places for
I,
that?
I
Or
I know. I think you know the answer to this question, because what the scriptures describe, for instance, the Big Pyramid,
Mhm.
is a place that allows you to travel,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
The body was placed on the sarcophagus
Yep.
or on the granite box, and you would travel astrally to the netherworld,
Mhm.
right? Where you meet Ma, the feather, and the wing, and all of that.
Mhm.
So, taking this in consideration, join this with the natural Mount Kailash or Pilot Mountain, that also are considered to be a place where you can travel. And you have an artificial structure that you have a text. This is related to what you said about the sound. You have a text called the Singing Pyramids.
Mhm.
And it describes that way before you see the pyramid, you start hearing this thump, 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 thump. That is also that produces a frequency. Well, on the outside, you feel this. I don't remember what exactly the chord, the musical chord. It's proeminent, but it's the same healing. It's the same chord that is used for healing,
Mhm.
basically. But this is on the outside, on top of the Mokattam formation where the pyramids of Giza are constructed. So right on the mother rock.
Mhm.
So everything that comes through the mother rock is being transported to the structures. Thank you, Nick. Um, so when you look at the pyramids and to the other structures around it, you heard me before speaking about the Osiris shaft, right?
Yes.
So the Osiris shaft, I have no doubt that is for healing, because it is the only megalithic site that I found that needs no human intervention. It was built in such a way that the frequencies are always there and always active. And we know that they are still active today because the water at the bottom is still easy water or
Mhm.
living water. So the frequency is still working. It's still creating the molecules of water into hexagons that don't allow impurities to stay between the molecules. So it's completely pure. So if you have an Osiris shaft that is for healing, should you have a gigantic pyramid for healing too? It makes little sense to me. So the
Mhm.
pyramid would have a different function. So
Right.
if you load that sarcophagus with the same type of healing of easy water or living water,
Mhm.
and you introduce the frequencies into that, who knows where your mind would travel
Right.
when you're subjected to those kind of energies and frequencies
Yeah.
inside it. What I can tell you is that then I think it was Christopher Dunn is the only person that was allowed in the 90s to take big speakers into that place and start to test modulating frequencies. The problem is, as soon as they started to turn the modulation on, everything started vibrating, which is normal, but they didn't know that. You see this on archaeoacoustic studies today. The whole structure vibrates and then achieves an equilibrium point where it starts to create standing waves and it stabilizes. It's like it enters a different physical reality, the whole
Mhm.
site. And so as soon as the structure started to vibrate, everyone was so scared that they run through the corridor, through the Grand Gallery, and they only stopped when they got outside. And so the
Right.
experiment was never done because they were just too afraid that
Yeah,
either
because
the
they thought it
structure,
was going to topple over, right?
yeah, well, or
Yeah.
would collapse,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. I
and
remember that.
and and that's exactly why there is that structure above the the king's chamber. Those
Mhm.
chevrons,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
they are there exactly as a spine to conduct that sound. It will
Mhm.
stabilize, but probably the bad use caused the crack in the lower stone to the left when you enter. To the left at the corner, you have a cracked stone,
Mhm.
and probably that's how they cracked it before. They were trying to activate it, and they introduced the wrong sound. And what is introduced the wrong sound? And this is probably what happened to Christopher Dunn, because this was not well known at the time. That is,
Mhm.
if you use, for instance, 4 hertz, right, on these structures, but you compress the 4 hertz, you create a sensation of fear, loss of limb control, hallucinations, madness. But if you uncompress the 4 hertz and you let them go freely, you create the sensation of contact with the divine, the sensation of bliss, of astonishing that was used in churches. In fact, they used it to take everything that people had.
Right.
Um, and I think that's what happened in the King's Chamber. They didn't realize they were starting to compress the waves, and that sensation of fear with the sensation of vibration
Mhm.
led them to cease the experiment, and it was never done again.
Right.
Uh, so I do think that the whatever is in the King's Chamber was like a transport machine where you can put in there and get to other places, or access knowledge, or even communicate with the gods. It's hard to tell. It's like a psychedelic experiment without the psychedelics,
Right.
right?
Right.
Or perhaps even with the psychedelics, because if you look into the work of Aaron Voigt, you'll find that they were very adamant of the use of DMT.
Mhm.
Uh, so you could be associating both things. But the thing is, when you look at the structure of the pyramid, and there's a lot of people discussing how the mechanism of the pyramid worked. They all agree on one thing. There is the water channeled by the Nile into these tunnels that goes into the bottom of the pyramid and then starts to raising and creating that sound. This is closing the circle to my answer. That
Mhm.
sound, the thump that creates the frequency, is the sound of water being naturally pumped
Yeah.
by the like a Humboldt or something pump that is created naturally and forces the water constantly against the structure and creates the frequency. Now you have these portcullis before the King's Chamber with these moving pieces, and what you see there is like the King's Chamber is like an instrument. It's like a flute. You have this continuous corridor, right, that
Mhm.
compresses sound as it goes up, and then you have these portcullis that control the flow of air that can enter or not,
Right.
right? And so you associate all of this being built atop the fault line and the waterways, uh, the sacred geometry used in the construction, the
Mhm.
mineralogy used in the construction, a system that allows a continuous movement of creating sound, right? And a
Yeah.
chamber with a stone box in it. Now, I like to say too that according to the Arab records, when they broke the guy that broke into the pyramid, they did took a mummy from that sarcophagus and they burned it outside because to them it was nothing. They were only interested in the gold. So
Yeah.
uh,
I did read about that too.
yeah, so the thing that people say never a mummy was found inside the pyramid. In the Great Pyramid, there was a mummy.
Yeah, there was. There definitely was. They don't know if it was from the time period of the
Of
Egyptians.
That's the thing. That's the
Yeah,
thing. That's
yeah,
exactly it. Because what
yeah,
people interpreted structures to be 1,000 years after they are built,
yeah.
it's not necessarily what they were built for.
Well, it could
So
have been, it could have just been a place where somebody was there for a moment. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that was their permanent spot. It could be like a funeral home. When somebody passes away, you go to a funeral home, you have what they call a viewing. That could have been a
exactly.
viewing, right? That could have been a place where people gathered at and said, okay, because it could have been the King's Chamber or wherever they found the mummy at. It could have been anywhere. They could have moved it in different places, right? It
Yep.
could have literally been like a funeral home. At least that's how I look at it. Like,
Yes.
maybe they didn't keep the dead there, but maybe because that place was a place of healing and that was a place of frequency resonation of all kinds of different types of frequencies, and a place where was looked at as a ceremonial place because it had to be in a place where ceremonies were done. I mean, it's too big and
Absolutely.
too great to not to be, right? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So I'm sure that they conducted ceremonies there, and people knew where the pyramids were at. I mean, you could see them from a distance, you know. So
Yes.
it could it maybe it was built for many different reasons, but the reason why it was built was pertaining to that time frame, and which brings me to the next tab that you talked about. And this is why I'm going to ask you this question this way. After I read it, it says the choice of stone used within these chambers was anything but random. And this is my thing. We went, I was telling you about how I was out there in my yard trying to learn how to get it up together, trying to, put my sandals on and go back in ancient times and actually till my yard up, get it going, learn the seasons, the sun, the stars, when the moon would be at its fullest, and all this. I had to learn everything that I had to learn just to get this up. This is not an easy job. You just don't go out there and throw seeds in the ground and it just grows. That's whoever thinks that shit don't know what they're doing, right?
We'll starve. We'll starve.
Will starve, right? Yeah, I would have starved at least the first 8 years. I guarantee you that's because I was messing up a lot. But my point is that how did we, and maybe you can answer it because I'm still trying to figure it out. What made us, or how did we go about finding these stones that helped us? Like, did somebody just say, "Oh yeah, this is a crystal. It has some kind of powerful frequency that helps people," or this mountain? Like, I know people walk barefoot a lot back then. So, walking up Pilot Mountain, you will feel the changes in that, right? So when did it, so I basically, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what is your thoughts and ideas on how this came to be for people to understand that these stones were used for healing? Because this is scientifically, they have peer review articles that crystals and stones and certain things can heal people. It just doesn't heal people the way that some people think it should heal. Like, you don't take a pill and it cures your headache like that. It's something you have to do constantly, and you have to focus on it. Focus and attention and sound will help you reach that. We talked about the last one where the stones, where you can rub stones against stones and it'll create a musical note for you, or you can hit a stone with a certain hammer and it'll create you know um, a sound for you. You actually taught me about there was a tribe in Africa. I can't remember the name right now.
The Baka people.
Yeah, the Baka people who would create music just slapping water.
Yeah, different techniques of slapping water.
Yeah, it was amazing. I actually showed my wife that video and she was like, "Wow, that is amazing."
That tribe hunts singing.
Yeah.
How do you hunt singing?
You're supposed to be quiet.
They hunt singing. They start singing. The first person to awake is the person that will start singing.
Wow.
And single one that awakes after will continue the song and accompany the song of the first person that is singing.
Well, frequency does attract animals, and I can tell you I know that personally because I'll sit outside with my acoustic guitar and I would play it outside. And I am not joking. I am not lying. I am not kidding. There will be birds who will fly straight to where I'm at. Not in, sitting around me and shit like that, but they would be on top of my roof. I have a big old tree in my backyard. So they'll be in a tree, they'll be on the fence line. Maybe I'll take a video or a picture of it next time. I'll set up my camera on where they usually come at and go out there and play my guitar, and you'll see them just fly. I have a pond in my neighborhood where you'll hear ducks just flying and geese flying over. And the sound that it produces while I'm playing the guitar and relaxing it's a whole different feeling. It's literally a feeling that feels good. You know what I'm saying?
Now imagine you take that guitar and go into one of these structures and start playing.
That's what and you know what? I might have to do this. I might have to bring my guitar next time I go up there to Pilot Mountain and see what that does. Because I can't remember the mountain, the part next to the mountain where I took the picture at. There's two places where you can stand on. One place that you can stand on and across the other way. It's like a little hill thing. They had a lot of buzzards and birds over there. A lot. So, experiencing all this stuff and reading your book, like I said, everybody, please go get the Resonant Earth, bro. We got 236 people in here. I know a few of you guys can go on Amazon and get this book. This book is worth
Thank you.
reading. If you're enjoying the show, if you're enjoying our conversation, you'll enjoy it even a lot more if you buy this book, because this is what we're talking about. We're talking about his book. I'm only on chapter 5, and we're an hour and 20 minutes in. We started
the second episode.
So we got to have more episodes, of course, but we're almost an hour and 30 minutes in, and we're only on chapter 5, and there's a lot of information in here, and we've done one podcast discussion on this already. So I'm going to go to the next tab that I have. Oh, the dance of frequencies on chapter 6. The dance of frequencies. When we was doing that ceremony at Pilot Mountain, there was a dog that was barking back there. You could hear it in the video and stuff like that. Some people were getting aggravated. Some people were getting upset. You could see it on their face, and you can hear the whispers and stuff like that. But that's how it would be when you're in a ceremony. You'll have people talking quietly, of course. You'll have animals in the background, because they had animals in their area. Then you would have what they would have, like dancing, right? You say in this book, you said the interaction between different frequency sources creates complex patterns that ancient builders utilized with remarkable precision. These include solar frequencies with the various electromagnetic and particle emissions from our sun, the Earth frequencies that result from the Earth's planet's natural resonant patterns, the cosmic frequencies that are originated in the incoming energy from the deep space. Finally, and obviously, the generated frequencies, meaning those introduced through human technology. I like that part, because this is what people fail to realize. Yes, we can use things naturally on this earth to get into meditative states, trance-like states, and any kind of state that you want to be a relaxation state. It doesn't matter, right? We can do that with, like we talked about, the Baka people with the water, making sound with the water. You have the ohms and the chanting, right? Which is a natural voice. But you also have, as a person who has consciousness and the ability to create things to enhance those abilities through technology.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, these headphones that I'm wearing are not the top of the line. They're Tozo headphones. But apparently, if you go look at their reviews, they're on par with Beats by Dre and Bose speakers, which I've had both of those. And I can tell you, don't ever buy Bose, because they only last for a year and a half, 2 years. And you spend all that money on it. And Beats by Dre, you're just buying it for the name, because Apple took over, right? But my point is that through all these different types of headphones, everyone says that they're used to enhance our sound quality, right? To be able to enhance the sound quality in everybody, so that people can listen to all the instruments, the sound, the frequencies, and get better representation of the music that's being played. We all know the difference in music being played from today to from the 70s, right? The music wasn't as clear and crisp in the 70s. You can hear background noise and this, that, and the third. Today, you have the ability to eliminate background noise while being live streaming. Now, what I like about this is that we use binaural beats for a lot of different things, right? And sometimes some people have a hard time. I'll give you an example. My son has autism, and he has to wear headphones sometimes, because sound stimulates him, right? If it's too loud, or if it's he has to be able to control his sound, right? And what I learned from him in researching autism and researching frequencies and stuff like that, I've actually taken these headphones and put them on his ears and play some binaural beats. I bought a couple of songs from, I think it's called HemiSync, if I'm not mistaken, it's like a place that specializes with it. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's called HemiSync. But let me see. Let me type it in real quick before.
Yeah, there's a few good ones, even on YouTube.
Yeah. Here we go. HemiSync. This one right here. I'm gonna stop screening this. I'm gonna keep that part up where we buy your book. So here, this right here. is a place where they do binaural beats and stuff like that. And you can buy different things that they have, it's expensive for the unlimited premium. I didn't do that. I bought one or two. Here we go. You can buy some for like $17. And they have a whole genre. So they have meditation, enhanced well-being, spiritual growth, wellness, reduce stress, relaxation, self-improvement, stress management, dream better, sleep better, creativity. I use this one a lot to write my book, Creativity. Health issues, death and dying, behavior modification, spa yoga, and so on and so forth. Our technology today helps us achieve these meditative states and ideas and stuff like that. And what's interesting, like, look at this one. They got courses, bro. Almost $799. That's a lot of money. But this technology, this is the one that I bought right here. It's the one I bought right here. The chakra meditation with HemiSync. It's bestseller, of course. It's dolphin sounds and music combined to help align and balance each other with of the 7 major chakras. This was actually the first ones I bought because I had bought a book that's called Chakras for Beginners. And that's why I bought that, or got this one. And I played every now and then. I'll go in my backyard when it's nighttime, maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning. The hour which you can, the hours that you prone to having better meditation states and stuff like that, I'll go out there and listen to it, or I'll sit in here and while I'm reading, I'll listen to it and stuff like that. So basically what I'm saying is that our technology helps us enhance our ability to reach these mind states. I clicked the wrong one. And this is no different. Listen to me, because we have DMT in our brain. We have cannabis receptors in our brain already, right? This is no different than psychedelics being used to enhance people's abilities to do this stuff, right?
It's the same thing.
Exactly, the same exact thing. So when you said that in your book, I was like, man, that's so cool, because you talked
I
about this.
think that psychedelics were used in places where they couldn't have this kind of technology.
Yeah. When I put these headphones on him and he listens to some of these meditated songs or frequencies, sometimes he does come down. It doesn't last long, of course, but it does last long enough for him to get that feeling. And as he gets older, it might help him in the long run. But basically all I'm trying to say is that our technology enhances our abilities to reach these states, these mind frames.
We are rediscovering it. We are finding it again.
Exactly. And not everybody has the ability to pull out a what is it? What they're called, the pitching fork, not the pitching forks.
The tuning fork.
Tuning forks. Yeah, I don't know why I said pitching forks. What the hell? But the tuning forks, yeah, nobody can walk around with tuning forks all the time, or a drum, right? Or any kind of instrument that will help them meet those meditative states. So what's the next best thing? Well, I grab my little phone, I put on a little meditative song on there, grab these headphones, and boom, I could be in the middle of the airport waiting for my flight that's 4 hours out, meditating. That's why they make what's it called? Sound canceling headphones, where you don't hear anything outside your headphones. Everything that you're listening to is going to be within your headphones or your earpieces itself. So technology helps us do this. This is not a gimmick. And who's to say that we didn't have this type of technology before? Hell, I remember as a little kid, you take 2 cups and you put a string in between it, and you can be on the other side of the room and you can hear somebody talking in it. Yeah. That's basic technology. Who's to say that, the King's Chamber wasn't that way with those tunnels? Those tunnels or those little things, that goes everywhere.
You have that in West Kennet Long Barrow. Mm-hmm. So West Kennet Long Barrow is 666 feet away from the short barrow, right? And there's a chamber on the long one where when you speak, the sound appears exactly at the same volume on the chamber of the short barrel, and they are completely unconnected. How do you make that happen? Why isn't this studied? Why it's just appeared in a paper like, oh, this happens, and no one goes and look into it, right?
Money, man. Everybody wants money for something, bro. Matter of fact, that's a good question that you asked, or a good comment that you made. I have always believed that money motivates people. You provide enough funds to somebody, and they'll make it happen, no matter what it is. I actually talked to what's his name, Matt Bill, about the vases there. And I was telling him, I said to him, I asked him, I said, because everybody's saying, well, how did they build these vases, or how did they make these vases? And they didn't use primitive tools and this, that, and the third, and these theories and all this other stuff. And I asked him, I said, or I didn't ask him, I told him, I said, well, it's kind of a question and a comment. I was basically saying that we don't walk around making these vases today. So we don't have a specific tool to make those. We only make tools for the job that needs to be done. Right?
Exactly.
Right? If I need to go fishing, my invention to catch fish without having to go in the water with my hands is creating a pole and a line of some sort with a hook. Right? That's my tool to enhance my ability to catch fish. It's no different than I have a hard time, not me personally, but people in general might have a hard time listening to sounds without having some kind of noise canceling device on their headphones, right? Because they'll be distracted of everything that's around them. So they need that technology to help them, with that. We're all not the same people, and we don't work and do things the same way. We all have our own special ways of meeting whatever it is we need, right? And this is chapter 7 of your book, and this is why I found this interesting. And I'm telling you guys, we don't prep for these discussions. Every discussion I have is literally me just reading from the book. And I'm telling you, get Ricardo's book. And your chapter 7 of your book it's titled "The Trident Frequencies: A Harmonized Frequency Model." And what I liked about it in the first paragraph that you said is, now that I exposed the both natural and artificial frequencies, it's time to dive into the latter. Ancient builders understood the concept of harmonized frequencies, for as most archaeoacoustic studies show, they use no or two or three core frequencies to create standing waves that alter the energy environment within their structures. Now, what I got from this was really interesting is how you both put the word in there: natural and artificial frequencies. The artificial frequencies would be something that comes through these headphones, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and the natural would be what the Baka people do with the wall. They, make.
No. Let me go back. The natural frequencies are the ones that are coming from the Schumann resonance, and the one created by the site itself. When you introduce the artificial one, that is the one that is introduced by man, that in this case represents the binatural in your concept.
Okay.
So you have your natural frequency. Okay. When you're using binatural, what you're using is your natural frequency as it reacts to whatever is around you, and you are isolating your brain with an additional group of frequencies, because if it is a binaural, it is more than one frequency alternating from one side to the other.
Yeah.
To try and create the same thing that you create on these sites, that is the standing wave.
Right.
And after you create the standing wave, that most people don't get results with the binaural beats because they never achieve the standing wave inside their skull.
Okay.
And so it is when the standing wave is created, that the third frequency that you were talking about. So you have I say it again, you have the Schumann resonance, that is a fixed one. Then you have the introduction of an artificial sound, and both combined with the design of the structure and this time is the brain instead of the skull instead of being a sight, will create a new sound.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the final sound, and that's the sound that will produce the effects through
Okay.
the combination of all of these elements. So, for instance, when they did the testing to try and see if the boy had actually seen a portal opening and all of that in West Kennet Long Barrow, the top researcher in charge of the project, for some reason that completely escapes me, decided to do the same experiment, but instead of the drum that worked with the 440 beats per minute,
Mm-hmm.
he decided to use binaural sounds.
Right, right.
And what happens is extremely interesting, because in my view, what happened to him is the site rejecting that introduction. Because this is a guy, I keep saying this is a guy that is well known for giving the dimensions of a site by sight.
Mm-hmm.
And when they go and measure it, the guy was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that the ceiling of the room that he was is a little shy of 2 meters tall, which I don't know how it is in feet. It's a little shy of 2 meters. So I am 1 meter and 82 high, so I would have a little bit of ceiling when I'm up, a little bit of ceiling above my head. Okay, around 6 feet, 7 feet, around that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you sit there listening to the binaural sounds, what happens is he said he was violently projected into 4 meters into the air.
Mm-hmm.
There is no 4 meters for him to go. Right? And he said he was very alarmed at first, and then he was brought down and he was thrown in the air 2 more times. And at the third time, he said he was more comfortable because he knew that probably it's just in my mind. But to him, it was absolutely real.
Right,
like
right.
actually being projected. And to me, it is the site telling him that's the wrong key.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like a rejection from what he was introducing, because the sound was not being introduced to the site, but to the person that is using the site.
Right,
And
right.
these places were not used, were not created to use that kind of technology. Were created for the sound to be introduced from the forecourt. And that's an important point, because the first time he went there, he put the sound where everybody thinks that the ceremonies would have the sound, that is on the main room of the structure.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing happened. And so on the second year, when he got back there, and I'm glad that he did, although he did a poor job at the end, he decided to use the forecourt that has all of these orthostats of sarsen stone that are pure crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the reflection of those sarsens into the site, with the help of the Humboldt effect and all of that created the perfect scenario for the 14-year-old boy to see the stones vibrating, starting emanating a dark light, as if dark can produce light. That's how he described it. And then this circular opening, portal opening, and you start to see another room that doesn't exist. Right? So I think that binaural is an excellent tool, but it's not created to work with this kind of technology. They are different. They use the same elements, but they are different in essence. Right.
Right. So yeah, that's, and that brings us to the next tab, where you talk about ancient practitioners may have access what is sometimes referred to as the Akashic record field, or the Akashic field. Now, I know about the Akashic records because of the simple fact that a lot of ancient texts talk about a place where past information is kept. It's basically a book of all our information, basically of everything in the past. And we talked about already that maybe we're relearning what we've learned, what we knew back in the day, right? And through these visions or different ideas and so on and so forth. The Akashic field, you actually say, is a repository of collective memory, wisdom, and information, which I agree with 100%. When you read the Bible, Ezekiel had a vision. He was given information. Abraham was given vision, information through a vision. Some people consider that the burning bush. And there are different individuals out there who had discussions with angels through a vision type state, and they were given information from something else. Nikola Tesla, a lot of his inventions came from a source outside of himself, meaning that it wasn't his physical form, but when he would sleep or meditate or do something, he was given information. I know a lot of inventors say that they and I'm not sure if it was Nikola Tesla, but there was a couple of inventors where I heard that they would, when they would invent something, they could see the whole invention inside their head, meaning
Yes.
that they knew every component and where it would go,
Exactly.
right? And they could,
Not necessarily understanding it, but
yeah,
following a model that was given.
yeah. And they, like in some of these newer movies with the technology, you know how somebody would be pointing to the screen, like doing this and moving things here
Yeah.
and grabbing something and doing stuff. That's what they said that he was able to do, or some of these people were able to do in their brain themselves. That they were able to visualize and move pieces in different places, flip it around, turn it upside down, you know, turn it around, look inside it, where it would fit at and stuff like that. And um, they always had uh, some type of frequency in the background. A good example is that I've read a lot of books from a lot of physicists out there: Eddington, George Lemaitre, Ford, Henry Ford, not Henry Ford. Jesus Christ, I can't remember his name right now. It's the guy that
No,
counted.
not any for, not Jesus Christ. It has to be another one.
Yeah. So, but I've read a lot of books from a lot of different physicists. Max Planck, of course, and they all said that they would listen to classical music
Of course.
while they were trying to do these equations, right? And what's interesting to me is that classical music, I actually listened to a lot of classical music when I was a little kid. I mean, I used to listen to it like crazy. It was mostly at night. Matter of fact, it was always at night. And I would listen to it before I would go to sleep or try to go to sleep or lay down and stuff like that. When I was in Iraq and Afghanistan, when I had to buy me some noise canceling headphones so I wouldn't hear, you know, all these different things that were going around. Sometimes you had to sleep through a firefight. Like it would be a firefight on the other side of the compound, and you could hear it, and
Yeah.
you would have to try to get as much rest as you can because the shit would go on for days on end, right? So there was different things that you know we had to do to or I had to do to eliminate some of those things. Like I can tell you right now, if our compound was hit, was there would be like 3 compounds within a 3 or 4 mile radius, right? And one compound would get attacked, everybody would be alert, but still people needed to get rest, right? People needed to get rest, and you couldn't get rest hearing that all through the day and all
Sure.
through the night, right? So they would say, you know, they'll have a little location where it's, you know, certain people who were on duty, like medical, like my last unit, medevac unit. A lot of these guys needed certain amount of hours of sleep. Believe it or not, in the military, I know a lot of people say this that or think this, but in the military, when you're in the combat war zone, you're not up all days and night fighting. You have to get rest. In many cases, a lot of MOSs required you to get a certain amount of rest. I was actually attached to an infantry unit my first deployment, and the company commander actually made everybody at least get 2 or 3 hours of sleep, no matter if we was in the middle of a firefight or not. Like he would say, "Hey, we've been fighting for 20," and then I'm not talking about shooting and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
Fighting means also being on alert too. Like
Sure.
somebody would do something, you'll be on alert for 6 to 8 hours and stuff like that. So when it was alert time, they would put it over the intercom. They would make certain sounds over the intercom and stuff like that. And you had to get your rest. You had to, because I mean, a lot of people would tell you that, if you didn't get your rest. I know this company commander used to tell us, he said, if you don't get your rest, you'll be liable. You probably might shoot the person next to you by
Sure.
accident,
You become a
because
liability. Yeah.
you become you really do become a liability. And so he would tell us, he would say, okay, we've been fighting for about 8 hours. It seems like things are quiet down. There's still some shooting in the distance, blah, blah, blah. But try to get some rest. And They will have us in a little area where we would sleep. Everybody would go to sleep. It'd be like, just a certain amount of individuals, and he will rotate us in and out. But to get that sleep, that rest that you needed, or what I needed, I would have to put on some noise canceling headphones and sit there and try to listen to it and stuff like that. Because when they came in and to wake your ass up, that it was over with, right? So you had to get your rest. So I know when I came back from Afghanistan, I didn't really know about the Akashic field or the Akashic records that I thought I did until just about maybe 2-3 years ago when I really did a deep dive into it. And what I've learned is that there's different frequencies, which you talk about in your book, that help you reach the state of mind where you can get information. I can tell you right now, there were plenty of people out there who would say that when they were sleep deprived and they couldn't get enough sleep and stuff like that, that they was given information about certain stuff. And it goes back to, I think it was Constantine who seen the cross in the sky for their battle, and that's when he converted to Jesus or Christianity because of that cross that he's seen. I believe that you can have a traumatic event happen to you, and you can have a frequency that helps you get over that traumatic event, right? Which will also learn how to get you to places where there's the information. And I give you a good example of that. I'm one of those people. I feel like after my brain injury, I was able to retain certain things easier when it came to history because it's a passion of mine, right? It's always been a passion of mine, and frequencies help me. That's why I was saying earlier that I listen to certain hemi-sync tracks for whatever I need help with. But under that same tab that I have on that one, you said certain states of heightened consciousness allow practitioners to achieve remote perception where they could intuitively gather information about distant places or events. Now, this is this is where I learned. This is where I took it as you're talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, remote viewing.
Yes.
Yeah. That's what you're referencing mostly to on that
Yeah,
part.
I think that what we use it today is slightly different of what it would be used in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because today you have specific reasons that are not necessary for communing, and bias reasons. Let's put it this way, right?
Okay.
So even when supposedly the American army tried to train personnel to do that,
Mm-hmm.
they had a specific agenda. So they are not using what is being given; they are trying to focus on what to see.
Right, yeah.
And
I think target.
And I think the shamanic perspective is much more give me what you think I need to receive instead of what I need to see, right? Or what I want to see. Sorry. There are some ways I think to ban that, but I think that's where the border between one and the other is the fact that one is directed to a purpose and the other one is openness to whatever the cosmos has to tell you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I put the difference.
Appreciate
but I can prove that the Akashic record exists,
mm-hmm.
because you have this individual that's an excellent biologist called Rupert Sheldrake, and he developed he refers to, I'm not sure he developed it, he refers to a study done with mice. And so let's imagine that in Asia, a group of 20 mice were given a new maze to solve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they take 16 hours to solve it. Then you take the exact same maze and you put a different group of mice in Germany, and they take 14 hours to solve. And then you take it to France to another group of mice, and they take 9 hours to solve it. Then you take it to the United States to another group of mice, and they take 4 hours to solve it. Why? Because the information already existed in the frequency that they are tuned to capture that information. They already knew instantly, with less mistakes, which path to follow to solve the maze. Uh, I usually say that I made an effort in my own development to completely bypass the brain, because I think thinking is leading to mistakes.
Right, right.
If you can maintain a constant connection to what is you are called the real self that
Hmm.
exists in the morpho genetic field around you, that uses this body via the interface that is your nervous system and the brain itself, you are automatically in connection with the other side of reality,
Mm.
because it's your real self. And
Mm.
your real self doesn't need a brain because it's constantly connected to this network. And how many times you hear of people saying, "Oh, when I was writing, I don't know what I write. I just channel it. It's like I'm
Mm.
channeling." Or musicians, they're writing music. They say, "Oh, I just comes out of me.
Yeah.
I just put it out," right? Or the inventors, as you were telling, they were being shown these things. Um, I think all of that is either a momentaneous period where you are in tune with this and you can obtain that information, or you can achieve a state of mind and a position as you rule yourself in life where you can be almost in constant contact with that, where you don't need to think, where you don't need the brain, you just feel instead of think. It's a
Mm.
different way of living. It's
Right.
by feeling, right? And is when you get a problem, like the problem we were discussing back again, when you receive that strange call and you're put under pressure, all of a sudden it brings your reptilian brain into function, and that service is severed. So you are forced to think, and the worry and the stress concentrates you. And that's exactly what you see in the agenda of the world, is the creation of war, famine, distraught, destruction, fear, terrorism, all of these things constantly being put into your mind so that you cannot bypass your own brain and experience reality. It's the same thing that you're saying, that, for instance, the, the, the Terence McKenna idea of the stone ape.
Hmm.
Evolution occurred because they found the mushroom, they start taking the mushroom, it opened new connections on the brain, and they start seeing different aspects and evolved, which I don't buy, but I think it's interesting. And you have the fact that when you smoke, for instance, cannabis, your field of vision increases 15 degrees. So if you smoke, you are a better hunter
Mm.
because you have a broader field of view. You have a better coding of colors. You can identify animals that are disguised in the herbs because you can see it better. So I think all of these things shows us that nature works in many ways, either for animals or for us, connecting this physical and metaphysical state that humans have ceased to use. We are now constantly in a materialistic state, and we've become mortals,
Yeah.
basically, because of that, because we unplugged ourselves from our connection to the all. And in my cosmology, I call this the animus equilibrium. And the animus equilibrium is the flow of everything from the one source, constantly circling around everything and returning to the source. It's like you were watching GTA 5, right? Not as a player, but as someone that is actually receiving all the information. You are learning everything of what people are doing in the game. But it's like an algorithm that is
Yeah.
collecting all the information, all the habits, and that creates a network of information that is then the Akashic records. And I'm sorry, I went in circles, but I
No,
did.
no, not no. That's perfect. That's perfect. That's a good way to end this. We're almost at 2 hours. We're going to start chapter 9, so it's going to be a part 3. We went 2 hours and we only went through six or 3 chapters. Uh, so or six chapters. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is do another one. I really appreciate it, man. You had 272 people watching you and listening to what you
Thank you.
shared.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to watch this and listen to this. I got to say it again. This will be the last time I say it until our next discussion. But buy his book. If you enjoyed this conversation and the one before this, I'm going to put the first one on my YouTube channel. We did it live on Twitter. I'm going to put that one on YouTube in the next few days, and then I'm going to do this one a week later, and then we're going to do one on his other book, Stardust. Great author, intelligent man, family man, wonderful father. Everything that is good out there, you find in Ricardo. I'm so glad that I got to meet him. Hopefully, one day we'll get to meet in person. But everybody, please go out there, get his book. Like I said, I say this before. You can buy the hard copy for $21.99, but if you have the Kindle subscription, that's a quick, easy, free download.
Yeah.
Okay. And he send comments in, give him a rating. I mean, honestly, this man right here has been doing it for a while. I enjoy every time we talk. I enjoy his information, his knowledge. I enjoy everything that he presents when he comes in to have these discussions with me. So please buy his book. I'm actually going to buy a hard copy. I have the Kindle. You also sent me a free PDF of both your books, but I am going to buy hard copies.
Thank you.
So I'm going to support him that way. My support is also by doing these discussions with him. And big old green black letters right here that you can see. Buy the book, The Resonant Earth by Ricardo.
Thank you.
So I'm going to end in here. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate y'all for coming out. We're going to have it. Yes. Thank you so much. All right, Ricardo, it's done.